are the child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind. You are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
You know, I think the Forerunners built these new structures around the old, to protect them, honor them. Pure speculation, mind you. I'd need to make a thorough survey to be sure. I wish I had time to decipher these inscriptions. The Forerunners revered this place, that much is clear. But was it a temple, a university? I can't say.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00. Today I have an insane theory for you guys. You can call it what you want. Insane, crackpot theory, a hell of a stretch of the imagination, the musings of a mind understimulated due to continued content drought, a hallucination fabricated by a detail-orientated mind with no detail to extrapolate, the contrivings of an old man's mind from the combined weight of age, the gravity of his situation, the dawning of his own mortality, and the inevitable spiral to senility. That's why I drink so much whiskey. That's good whiskey though. Or it could be none of those things. It could be true. In fact, I'm convinced that it is. Now you can accept it, or you can refuse it. I honestly don't mind. This is my hill, and on this hill, I am king. And I am prepared to die here. Just make sure I got a good bottle of whiskey in preparation. So have a listen to what I have to say, and then get into that comment section, or better still, get over to Discord so we can discuss it more. I will be reaching out to 343 in a desperate attempt to have it confirmed, but enough of my excited rambling in your ear. Let's get to the juicy stuff. Today, let's discuss the hidden narrative we have all missed. Back in Halo 4, 343 Industries made the bold move to give the Forerunners a face. We met the Erdidact, a living, breathing Forerunner, and at least to our immediate knowledge, the last of his kind. In this decision, they made it clear that humans and Forerunners were two different species. I know at face value that doesn't seem like much, but to those of us who have been around since the beginning of Halo, that was a very significant move. You see, when Bungie held the franchise, they had very different plans for the Forerunners and the mystery that surrounded them. While it wasn't explicitly stated, it was heavily implied that the Forerunners were ancient humans. It was heavily implied that the Forerunners were ultra-advanced ancient humans that had spread throughout the galaxy, and when the Flood arrived in the galaxy, they did all they could to fight the Flood back and index the species of the galaxy before activating the Halo Array and destroying all life in the galaxy. The reseeding process included reseeding their own species on Earth, their original homeworld. And after 100,000 years of time had passed, humanity forgot about their spacefaring ancient ancestors that crowned them as the most advanced species in the galaxy. In this regard, the name Forerunner quite literally translated to those who came before. This was reiterated on numerous occasions by one of the only characters that we are aware of that were around when the Forerunners activated the array and disappeared. 343 Guilty Spark himself, as well as the Flood Compound Intelligence, the Gravemind.
You already knew that. I mean, how couldn't you?
Left out that little detail, did he?
We have followed outbreak containment procedure to the letter. You were with me each step of the way as we managed this crisis.
Chief, I'm picking up movement.
Why would you hesitate to do what you've already done?
We need to go, right now.
Last time you asked me, if it were my choice, would I do it? Having had considerable time to ponder your query, my answer has not changed. There is no choice. We must activate the ring.
Child of my enemy, why have you come? I offer no forgiveness of other sins. Pass to his son.
You are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
So while it wasn't explicitly stated, it was heavily implied, although it is worth noting that there are some instances where this implication is contradicted. For example, in the Halo 3 terminals, the librarian's final transmission from Earth, where she discusses how precious and fertile the Earth is, and how they knew it was special because of them, suggesting she was referring to humanity as them. Then the argument could be made that why would the librarian refer to her own species as them? Well, in all fairness, she wouldn't, but we'll circle back to that. With it heavily implied that humans and Forerunners were one and the same, the move by 343 Industries to actually reveal a living Forerunner and make it abundantly clear that Forerunners are a completely different species was a bold move, and one that many of the older fans weren't immediately happy with. For me, personally, I had read the Forerunner trilogy of books before Halo 4 launched, so for me, and for others who also read those books, it was kinda spoiled that humans and Forerunners were not the same species, but ultimately when that immense, powerful, dominating form was revealed, descending from the cryptum, I silently mouthed, "It's the Didact." Then, as he stood and his armour formed around him, I repeated, "Holy shit, it's the Didact." While I was a little set back by the massive difference in appearance of Forerunners and humans, and the realisation that Forerunners were most definitely not humans, the reputation, the history and the look of the Didact was enough to kind of pacify me for the time being, but I would be lying if I said I didn't think over the coming weeks and months, it's a shame that Forerunners are no longer ancient humans. With the Forerunner trilogy, a lot of new lore emerged that while it enriched the narrative, I can't help but feel it was implemented to explain and justify why Forerunners and humans are different species, and to smooth over this depart from the heavily implied narrative Bungie left behind. The precursors and even more ancient species was introduced. It was also a flood origin story, and simultaneously also gave us the ultra-advanced ancient human narrative we were somewhat denied by the newer narrative separating humans and Forerunners. Ancient humanity had become a spacefaring race 1.1 million years ago, although it is assumed by this that ancient humanity were much, much older than this. Forerunner history dated back to 15 million years ago, when they were initially created by the precursors. In truth, only 5 million years after the precursors created the Forerunners, the precursors decided humanity would be the heirs to the mantle of responsibility. So this means humanity as a species are at least 10 million years old. But before we move on to the next part of this theory, bear this in mind. Between 50 and 100,000 years ago, Homo erectus still existed, as did Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, Homo floresiensis, and Homo uzunensis. 6 different species of human all existed within the past 100,000 years. And on top of this, from a cultural perspective, we struggle to fully understand the actions, motivations and abilities of the ancient Egyptians, members of our own species whose last dynastic individual was Cleopatra VII, who died in 30 BCE, just 2050 years ago. So keep that in mind. On the level Delta Halo in Halo 2, some of the first structures we come into contact with are ruins. They have some similar, though not identical, architectural designs to other Forerunner structures, but otherwise lack the high-polished metallic finish that we've grown accustomed to. In the Kilo 5 series of books, some ancient Forerunner ruins on Shieldworld Trevelyan, Sanghelios and Hesperos are described, and it is revealed that they contain teleportation devices, or rather translocation portals, slip-space doorways, that enable beings to travel huge distances between locations almost instantly. Our old friend Julam Dharma is just such an individual whom, after learning of them from the human scientist Evan Phillips, located a portal doorway within the Onyx shield world and escaped imprisonment by the humans emerging on the Sangheli colony of Hesperos. These portals are built so seamlessly into stone structures that they are easily missed and can be activated and used in spite of their ancient appearance.
You know, I think the Forerunners built these new structures around the old, to protect them, honor them. Pure speculation, mind you. I'd need to make a thorough survey to be sure. I wish I had time to decipher these inscriptions. The Forerunners revered this place, that much is clear. But was it a temple, a university? I can't say.
Cortana speaks about these ruins when we're on Delta Halo, saying, you know, I think the Forerunners built these structures around the old to protect them, to honour them. Pure speculation, mind you. I'd need to make a thorough survey to be sure. Followed by, I wish I had more time to decipher these inscriptions. The Forerunners revere this place, that much is clear. But was it a temple or a university? I can't say. In a previous video on the ruins on Delta Halo, I discussed that the Forerunner ancestors may have created these structures and their translocation portals such a long time ago that they are now also held in a degree of reverence, hence building new structures around them to protect them. It is also highly likely that the full extent of where the translocation portals actually go, or others they are connected to, is not fully understood by the generation of Forerunners responsible for building the newer structures. As such, they would preserve them and evidently move them from their original location for perhaps future study. The builder rate of the Forerunners had a particular interest in ancient Forerunner technology. Builders were drawn to the Forerunners' ancient past, with some believing that Forerunners had long earlier possessed superior technologies and sought to recreate this past greatness with their technological achievements. Such beliefs were also the basis of elements in the rituals of the secret societies that existed within the Builder Rate, and these rituals had traces of Forerunners' past beyond their recorded history, including symbols based upon designs of 10 million-year-old warships, which had otherwise been long forgotten. This mirrors some of our own thoughts about the ancient Egyptians, among others, and how they built huge structures like the pyramid with copper tools so perfectly you can't get a piece of paper or a razor blade between the blocks. Well, now let's link this with something we've seen more recently. A stone circle. The very ones we've seen throughout the marketing materials for Halo Infinite, and this takes place on Zeta Halo. But more than that, this stone circle appears to be emanating a purplish energy. In fact, it looks like a portal. Its architecture and even the material mirrors that of the ruins on Delta Halo. Things are about to get strange. The Halos were built around 100,000 years ago, yet the ruins on Delta Halo appear much older. As previously said, they were likely moved from where they were discovered, and newer structures built around them to protect them. And since the builders revered them so much, we can assume they were built during the Forerunners' long-forgotten past. I say assume because not even the Forerunners know for certain. While the Forerunners have used the domain to store their records and histories, the older the information, the more distorted it becomes, and the domain even purposefully suppresses certain information. In this way, knowledge of the precursors, the Forerunners' genocidal war against them, and almost all of the Forerunners' ancient history is lost to the sands of time and the deepest corners of the domain. So if the ruins on Delta Halo and the rings on Zeta Halo are built by the same people, are both of them ancient Forerunner? Or are they both ancient human? In the Halo Legend story, The Babysitter, we come across a colony with ancient ruins on it. These ruins bear more than a passing resemblance to those on Delta Halo. In the commentary of this, Frank O'Connor confirms that these ruins were built by ancient humanity, but that he can't go into detail as it will spoil upcoming developments in the storyline of future games. So those ruins are ancient human, and they are very similar in style, material and age as the ruins on Delta Halo and Zeta Halo. And they contain advanced translocation technology, and likely much, much more. So, have the Forerunners been worshipping, protecting and studying ancient human ruins all this time? Well, probably not. But also it's possible they have at the same time. This is where things get intense. Both the Forerunners and ancient humanity are millions of years old, 15 million years in the case of the Forerunners, and well over 10 million for the ancient humans, likely 15 million as well, as Forerunners and humanity were apparently both created by the precursors. It stands to reason they were created roughly the same time. Well, what if they weren't? What if the precursors created a single species 15 million years ago that diverged in their evolutionary journey and became two separate species 5 million years after their creation? The single species that was created had evolved enough to be considered ancient Forerunners and ancient humans. Just as humanity and chimpanzees share a common ancestor here on Earth, what if humans and Forerunners also share a common ancestor that was created 15 million years ago? For the ease of the rest of this video, I will be calling this single ancestral species the progenitors. So now let's make some statements that I will then provide evidence to support. This species, the progenitors, was created by the precursors and advanced quickly, achieving interstellar travel and colonization quite soon after their creation. Remember, humanity in our current form have only existed for around 100,000 years, and look at what we've achieved in such a small period of time, and this is only accelerating due to our technology. The progenitors could have been around 500,000 years old and achieved interstellar travel. It stands to reason they would evolve somewhere akin to as fast as we have, with their technology accelerating their development. So the progenitors quickly became the dominant species in the galaxy. They built colonies across the galaxy and linked them via translocation portals built into the very stone of their structures. We are already aware and making considerations about the fact that if humans are to colonize Mars in the coming years, after generations and generations of living on Mars, the humans there will likely begin to evolve independently from the humans on Earth due to different gravity and different environments. We also know from our relatively recent fossil records that of the dozens of species of humans that have existed in the past million years or so, the only one that survived was us, most likely because we were the most able to adapt. The progenitors colonized the galaxy, and from this huge array of different environments, two subspecies started to emerge from the singular progenitor race. 10 million years ago, the precursors returned to the galaxy to test their creation for the worthiness to hold the mantle of responsibility, and when they returned, they tested the emergent subspecies that would eventually become the Forerunners. When they failed, they chose the other subspecies to be tested next. At this stage, both subspecies still considered themselves a singular race, the progenitors. But the difference in the two must have been enough for the precursors to consider them individually testable. The would-be Forerunner progenitors didn't like that the would-be ancient human progenitors would become the holders of the mantle when they still considered themselves as a single species, so they revolted against the precursors. They began their genocidal campaign against the precursors and forcibly took the mantle. These two subspecies would eventually come to be known as the Forerunners and the Reclaimers, aka ancient humanity. And the animosity of this event would segregate the two subspecies of the progenitors and see them evolve completely independently from each other to the point that the progenitor race no longer existed, and much like the hominid common ancestor of humans and chimps, and instead Forerunners and Reclaimers continued on. All of these events were stored in the domain. However, after millions of years, the war with the precursors and the progenitors, the common ancestor of humanity and the Forerunners, and their advanced technology were forgotten. So now, let me provide some evidence to support these statements. After millions of years of separate evolution, the now quote-unquote modern Forerunners find ruins that they recognise enough to believe is their own ancient ancestors' work, and do all they can to preserve them. They move important examples to facilities to protect and study them to find out the advanced and hidden technology within. They put examples on Delta and Zeta Halo and likely the other Halos too, we just haven't seen them yet, as well as many of the Shield worlds including Onyx. They have no idea they're actually the work of a single common ancestor, the progenitors. They simply think that they're their own work. The Flood, a corrupted form of the precursor, return to the galaxy and begin infecting human worlds. Ancient humanity flee and move into Forerunner-controlled space. This sparks the Human-Forerunner War, igniting age-old bad blood caused as a consequence of one of the subspecies being chosen over the other. How, if the Forerunners were the dominant species in the galaxy to this point and enforced an imperial peace, did ancient humanity and their empire end up as large and as sophisticated as it did if they evolved much more recently? The Forerunners learn of the Flood after they conquered humanity and evolved them, and in so doing discovered that humanity's genetics rivaled their own. Let's find more. The Primordial chose to stop attacking ancient humanity and lulled the Forerunners into the assumption that ancient humanity had found a cure. What if the Primordial did this because it identified that ancient humans weren't the subspecies that attacked and betrayed the precursors all that time ago, and instead stopped consuming them to attack the subspecies that was responsible, while simultaneously guaranteeing that ancient humanity would live past this war and claim the mantle as it was originally intended? After the Forerunners activated the Halo Array, humanity did indeed survive and proliferate again, yet in modern times, the Flood still attack and consume humanity. When the Flood first emerged, they were in the feral stage, but by the events in Halo 2, a Gravemind now existed. Despite not actually being the species that hunted them to extinction, the Gravemind calls us child of my enemy, because that is exactly what we are to him. The Gravemind still hates us because both humanity and the Forerunners were once a single race, the progenitors, that killed the precursors. The Primordial thought differently and spared humanity, but that doesn't mean the Gravemind believes the same thing. They are technically two different entities and could feasibly disagree on particular ideals. Want more? The Forerunners mutated themselves through their lives to better suit their minds and bodies to the roles in society, and yet a young, unmutated Forerunner, called a Manipular, bears a striking resemblance to humans. More? The Librarian travelled to the satellite galaxy Path Cathona to find the truth of the war with the precursors, and when they got there, they found what they thought were ancient Forerunners, no technology, living a simple, rudimentary lifestyle, and they looked strikingly similar to humans. We can activate Forerunner technology at a touch. No other species can. Is it because the Forerunners wanted us to inherit what they left behind? Or is it simply that our common ancestral genetics grants us access on a cellular level? Or is it both? And yet the Didact is quoted as saying, "We risk eons in the darkness while they seize our triumphs for their own." While the Didact may not speak for the majority of Forerunners, it does suggest that perhaps the Forerunners didn't necessarily want us to inherit what they left behind, but rather we did through the merit of our shared genetics. The ruins on Delta Halo, the rings on Zeta Halo, Bungie implying humans are Forerunners, 343 Industries stating humans are not Forerunners, Chief being recognised as the child of an enemy or creator, the Primordial's desire to protect humanity, the Gravemind's desire to destroy humanity, the missing history of the Forerunners, the discrepancies in the history of humanity, the resemblance between Forerunners and humans, all of this and more can be explained by the realization that Forerunners and humans both evolved from the progenitors, a single species created by the precursors 15 million years ago, who then evolved on different paths to become two distinct but related species. The ruins are progenitor. Humans and Forerunner both evolved from progenitors. We are one and the same. What's your take on this? If this is accurate, 343 have done a remarkable job threading this subtle string of narrative through the games that they've created thus far and linking them back to Bungie while still leaving their own stamp on the franchise. I'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts, so drop into the comments, or better still, hop over to Discord and come and find me there. There are subtleties to this theory that I haven't covered in this video and that occurred to me while I was recording this, but we're already getting on for 25 minutes, so this conversation is still very much open. So it's time for a big discussion. And while we're at it, let's make some noise so 343 Industries can hear us and either confirm or deny it. I prefer the former, and hell, if they like it, they can feel free to factor it into the lore if they want. Just saying. I deserve a drink after this. This is becoming a habit. But it's a habit I like. Sorry. Cue the outro. Thanks for watching. Stick your comments down below, or ideally in Discord. I look forward to what you have to say. I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons: Nika the Silent Cartographer, Brian, Sebastian, Red Sea Darian, Stalker of the Realms, Falcon X003, Alvin, Mr. Fell, Flaming Halo the Revanche, Starlight, Viking, Legions Lost, the TG7, TJ Jazz, Cat Herder Cam, Schneidish, and Leon the Holders of the Mantle, my glorious Reclaimers, my loyal Metarchs, I raise a glass to all of you, and all the other patrons that have jumped aboard to support the channel. You guys are awesome, and all this wouldn't be possible without you. If you like Halo lore discussed to insane levels of detail, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Be sure to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord, and if you really love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon and support the channel over there. It means the world to me and would free up more of my time for me to put into this content and other Halo-related goodness. Take it easy, everyone, and find peace in the domain. And let's get discussing.